Deion Sanders has changed the game in a lot of aspects in college football. And I wonder if he's changed the most important aspect. I think everything he's done as a college football coach has altered the landscape, but has he altered the biggest landscape? Is the question I'm pondering today. This is the Daily Huddle for Thursday, November 14th. I'm Garrett Searight. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. Deion Sanders, when he got the job at Jackson State, ruffled feathers and made waves because he didn't have the experience that everybody thought you needed a college football coach to have. And I think those people were right. Those people had legitimate questions for how a guy got a FCS head coaching job like that. And we saw then some, I don't know if clones is the right word, but, Eddie George didn't have any college football coaching experience and got the head job at Tennessee State. You saw it in other places that hiring a guy that had the name recognition that Deion Sanders does led to instant credibility, instant notoriety, instant public interest that Jackson State turned into really successful seasons and Deion Sanders turned into a job at Colorado. And there was a natural hierarchy to college coaching. You had to start here. You then went here, here, here. You then moved up to a coordinator somewhere. And then you became a head coach either at a group of five school that led you to a head coach at a Power 5 school. Or you jumped from coordinator at a Power 5 school to another coordinator to another Power 5 school as the head coach. But that was only if you were an SEC or Big Ten coordinator for the most part. There weren't a lot of, like Big 12 coordinators that became Pac-12 head coaches, things like that. And it's not, the hierarchy wasn't always followed, right? But Deion Sanders obliterated the natural progression that college coaches had grown to know as the ladder of the coaching rungs. And I wonder if he blew up the ladder enough that the right person, the right former player, can go into a situation without the natural progression like Deion Sanders did at the Power 5 level. Will somebody be emboldened enough to follow the model that Deion Sanders started and say, I know you don't have the coaching acumen that you need, that is expected of you, but I can't help but notice that Deion Sanders didn't either, and things have gone pretty well. And I realize it's only a couple of weeks at Colorado, but if it continues, that trend, I think, will continue. You saw it in the NBA a couple of years ago, and Major League Baseball too, where guys would step off the field and become a head coach. Step off the court and become a head coach. Now, I don't think it's going to be that quick for college football. I don't think if Caleb Williams isn't going to step off the field. Tom Brady's not going to be hired, I don't think, as the head coach at Michigan if Jim Harbaugh decides to leave for the NFL this year. I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't think, Caleb Williams wins the Heisman Trophy and is like, you know what, I want to be the USC head coach. Like, sounds good. I don't expect that to happen. But can former players who were great in college and had multitudes of success in the NFL jump from their playing careers to college head coach? I think somebody's going to try it. You kind of just saw it with Trent Dilfer at UAB. He doesn't have college coaching experience, a lot of high school experience, a lot of individual quarterback skill development experience, but doesn't have the college coaching experience. But when Trent Dilfer got hired, UAB probably got a lot more publicity out of the deal than if they had hired the wide receiver coach from Auburn. It's just the reality of the situation. And in an era in college football where you got to win the press conference as much as it's important to win the games that are put on your schedule, winning the press conference matters, because that's the initial recruiting boost, the initial booster, donations, all the things that you think we need to accomplish and we need to get done when you first get to campus is winning that press conference. And I think that the more publicity your school gets, the more notoriety your school gets, the more that you can be talked about, for better or worse, is always going to be a good thing, especially at the lower levels and at the lower levels of Power 5. And we know the hierarchy of Power 5 football. We don't have to pretend that Indiana and Purdue are on the same level as Ohio State and Michigan. You don't have to pretend that Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Vanderbilt are on the same level as LSU, Alabama, and Georgia. We know that. We don't have to confront that. And yet, I can't help but think at some point, somebody in those lower levels of Power 5 football, where I have maintained on this podcast, you cannot do the same things that everybody else does in your conference. There are just schools that have to do more with less. Does the publicity, because Deion Sanders, his name recognition not only is going to get him recruits, is going to get him really good assistant coaches as well, because they know that he's going to find a way to be successful, and they're going to be in front of a lot of eyes. Sean Lewis was the head coach at Kent State and did a really nice job. I live in Ohio. Kent State, under Sean Lewis, Kent State is not an easy job by any stretch of the imagination. It might be one of the toughest jobs in all of college football. And Sean Lewis did a really nice job. Sean Lewis was never, unless Kent State had one of those top 25 seasons, going to be viewed as a candidate for a top Power 5 job or even a middle tier Power 5 job. He was going to have that kind of same Dave Clawson type situation where, being the head coach at Wake Forest was going to be his natural progression, and he would have to succeed at Wake Forest before he got a job in the upper echelons of college football. That was going to be the path to big boy football for Sean Lewis. He's Colorado's offensive coordinator now, and there are already people saying he might make a lot of sense at Michigan State if Mel Tucker gets fired. That was never going to happen for Sean Lewis at Kent State, unless he put together a top 25, 11-1, 12-0 season, and they got to be the G5 New Year's Six representative. It just wasn't going to happen. He was never going to be a candidate at Michigan State because you can't win a press conference with a coach coming from Kent State. Like it or not, at a mid-tier Power 5 school like Michigan State, it just isn't going to fly. But you go be the offensive coordinator for Colorado, where you're getting all the publicity, all the notoriety, name recognition, all the eyeballs on college football are upon your program. And why? Because of Deion Sanders. So you can piggyback yourself off of the success that Deion Sanders has and has had. And I just can't help but think that situation is not more, I don't know what the word I want to use is here, is not a better situation for some schools other than we're going to hire the defensive coordinator from whoever. This guy been really successful at Rice. Great. But you know what? Is hiring Randy Moss as your head football coach, is that going to get you a hell of a lot more recruits and assistant coaches and donations? Bethune-Cookman hiring Ed Reed. Now, it didn't end up going so well. But situations like that, because the more prevalent it becomes in the lower levels, it's going to work its way up. That is the natural progression of college football. If somebody else has the cojones and the berries to try it somewhere else first and it's successful, i.e. Jackson State hiring Deion Sanders, and then Deion Sanders getting the Colorado job because Colorado is desperate for publicity and name recognition and excitement the more often that it happens at the lower levels of college football. It's only a matter of time until somebody in Power 5 goes, you know what? We might need to do that. If Brent Pry doesn't work out at Virginia Tech, I bet you somebody in their office, in their board of trustees, regents, whatever it's called, looks around and says, is Mike Vick too toxic to talk about having to have a conversation with about this head coaching job? Somebody's going to think it. Somebody's going to say it. Because if Deion Sanders is successful at Colorado, and I've told you on this podcast, I think Deion Sanders is going to be successful at Colorado. I don't think he's going to be national championship winning head coach at Colorado. I think that happens somewhere down the line potentially for Deion, but I don't think it happens at Colorado. But if he can win a conference championship or two with the Buffs, somebody is going to view that at some point as like, why the hell aren't we doing that? Why are we leaving that to other schools to get the excitement and the boosters involved and the fundraising and all of those things that comes along with hiring somebody like Deion Sanders? It's not going to be far down the line, in my estimation. I could be wrong. Maybe the status quo is maintained and the natural progression of coach, starting as an assistant coach at a G5 school, then assistant coach at a Power 5 school, becoming an offensive coordinator, becoming a G5 head coach or an offensive coordinator at a Power 5 school, and turning that into a low-level Power 5 job. Maybe that continues. I think Deion Sanders might have changed the game here, like Deion Sanders is wanting to do. I just wonder how long it's going to take for it to become really prevalent that guys that are going to be leaving the NFL or guys that were superstars back in their day. You can't tell me that there isn't a MAC school or a Sunbelt school or a Conference USA school. You cannot tell me that there's not somebody in Conference USA that doesn't see the excitement that Deion Sanders brings to their program and says, you guys think Tim Tebow wants to do this? If we just throw some money at him? Because the playbook doesn't appear to be hard. Find somebody that kids are going to relate to and go, holy crap, that guy's the head coach at wherever? Well, now I'm interested. And assistant coaches go, you know, that guy's going to have a lot of eyeballs on him. Because Jackson State ain't going to be playing on ESPN unless Deion Sanders was their head coach. Both Big Noon Kickoff and College Game Day aren't going to be at Colorado unless Deion Sanders is their coach. 2 national pregame shows are going to be at Colorado on Saturday for one reason and one reason only. Who is wearing the headset on the sidelines? And if that's all it takes to get eyeballs on your program, and eyeballs equal fundraising dollars, and fundraising dollars equal better facilities, and better facilities equal better recruits, and better recruits equal better results. If you are a struggling program, you're kind of crazy not to consider it, right? It's just what I think. But I think it's not going to be long until guys who don't have a ton of college coaching experience, but are big names, bring eyeballs, and have big followings, are going to get more and more opportunities to lead programs going forward. This is the Daily Huddle. I'm Garrett Searight. If you were watching on YouTube, drop a subscribe, hit the thumbs up button. It goes a long way in helping us get in front of more college football fans. If you're listening on the podcast, give us a 5-star review. That puts our podcast in more feeds, and it'll help grow the channel. We certainly appreciate it. Also today, we talked yesterday about some things that the NFL, the one area really that the NFL does better than college football and TV, and that's the alternate broadcast. That there's really not any room on TV for alternate broadcasts for college football games. Kind of going back to that I'm guessing you saw the news that Aaron Rodgers popped an Achilles on Monday Night Football on a turf field, and it has brought up the questions of whether turf fields are the best fields for NFL stadiums. And I wonder what that means for colleges going forward, because like the NFL, a lot of college stadiums switched to artificial turf. And now the NFL Players Association is saying we need to go back to natural grass. And there are just some places where natural grass doesn't make a ton of sense. For instance, at Ohio State, they sunk their field a few years ago on purpose to add some more bleachers to get rid of the track that surrounded the football field. And when they did that, they said that the grass became more difficult to maintain and grow, and therefore it was better to switch to artificial turf. And they put in a new artificial turf down before last season. If there are going to be definitive studies that show that there are negative impacts of playing on turf, and NFL teams start going, oh crap, we got to switch this out. We got to put natural grass down. There are going to be some colleges that are going to have to either decide, are we going to keep our unsafe turf for our players, and they're going to know that it's unsafe, or what are we going to do here? And for some schools, in the South, where they all almost have natural grass, because you can grow and not have to worry about natural grass. You don't have to worry about playing a game the Saturday of Thanksgiving where it's 30 degrees outside and it's the 9th time you've played on that grass and it's been torn to hell after you played a game in the slop and the mud in late October. You don't have to worry about that some places. In other places, I'm sure the idea of oh my gosh, we got to switch back to natural grass. We got problems if that's the case. It's not a fun thought to think about. But don't be surprised. And for a while there, the turf was all the rage, right? You weren't investing in your program unless you put down turf. And now, how drastically that has changed, where I don't think anybody is you know what, I really love turf. I love those early season September 2nd games where it's 95 degrees outside, but it's 130 on the turf because they put in a bunch of black rubber pellets that just soak up the sun. I don't think anybody loves turf. It just became super convenient. But now, if there are going to be studies from the NFL Players Association that say, hey, natural grass is the only option for us going forward, colleges are going to have some question marks. Colleges are going to have some things to talk about. And I don't know that that's something that they want to have to talk about, but it's going to have to be talked about because more than the NFL, college football comes under more scrutiny for player safety. You see it right now with the clock rules. Why are we going to shorten games? Player safety, baby. And I said, I think it's somewhat cynical. At the time, I thought it was somewhat cynical of they're doing this for TV money. And they very well could be. But if you're going to eliminate 5 plays a game over the course of 12 games, that's a game's worth of snaps lost during the season. Mecca Ibuka from Ohio State earlier this week had said, I still feel pretty fresh. I usually feel pretty fresh in week 2, but at times in the second half of their game against Youngstown State, he's I never really got tired because we weren't playing a whole lot of snaps, which could end up being a good thing. I don't know. I just know that player safety is going to matter to the NCAA as long as the NCAA is around. It's simply because they don't want the headache and the heartache of having to deal with legislators and things like that, questioning whether they have the best interest of college athletes at heart, because they don't need any more of those questions. So player safety is going to matter to the NCAA. And when studies start to show, and I don't know if they will, there seems to be an insistence from the NFL Players Association that turf fields suck and natural grass is the only option going forward. If that's the case, there are going to be some colleges that got some questions and have some things they've got to deal with. And I don't know that they want to do that. Traveling for work. We're going to be back on Sunday inside the normal studio. So I've got that to look forward to. Week 3 of the college football season upon us. Really looking forward to chatting it on Sunday as we'll have all the recaps of all the biggest games to talk about coming up on Sunday. Again, I'm Garrett Searight. This has been the Daily Huddle for Saturday Glory. Appreciate you making us a part of your day. However it is, wherever it is you're doing so, certainly do appreciate it. Again, if you want to watch it on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. It goes a long way in helping the channel. If you're listening on the podcast, drop a 5-star review, and we'll read them here on the show. I'll catch you Sunday here on the Daily Huddle on Saturday Glory.